Hey guys, Mike ML556 here. And in a recent video, we looked at the high standard vintage 22 long rifle pistols as suppressor host, and we went over some of the advantages of those guns and some of the features that you might need to look for if you're picking out one of those guns to use as a suppressor host. Now, if you want to see that video, we'll put a link up to that. In today's video, what we want to do is look at a few of my favorite 22 pistols to use as suppressor host. And we'll talk about some of the differences between these models. And hopefully you can use that information to decide which handgun best fits your needs. So to quote Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music, these are a few of my favorite things. So I brought along a few 22 handguns that I think are among my favorite for shooting 22 long rifle suppressed. And we'll take these out and we'll go over the differences, some of the pluses and some of the minuses. We have the Walther P22, the Buckmark, the Ruger Mark II, and then the gun we featured in our video, the high standard, vintage high standard gun. This one was probably from about the mid-60s. And I brought along the Outback II suppressor. We have the vintage high standard that I used in my first video looking at 22 long rifle pistol suppressor host. Then we have a Browning Buckmark. This has been modified. I took the barrel off, had it shortened and threaded. We have our trusty Outback II suppressor from Gemtech. One of my very favorite 22 pistols, the Ruger Mark II. Stainless steel. Once again, I had the barrel sent off. In this situation, the barrel is the receiver. It's kind of connected, and so you have to send the receiver off and have the barrel worked on. I had it shortened and threaded, and then a thread protector made for the barrel. And then the Walther P22. These have barrel nuts, and you can buy an adapter. So these are very easy to convert to a threaded barrel by simply buying an adapter that replaces the factory barrel nut and adding the threads with the adapter. So these are real easy to convert to a threaded gun if you have a model that doesn't come with the threads already from the factory. And let's talk about some of the features of these guns, the differences between these guns when you're looking to try to pick a nice 22 long rifle suppressor host. We'll start with the Walther. This is a very light, very small gripped gun. Of all these guns, the Walther is the smallest and the lightest, and so if you have small hands, then certainly this would be a consideration. I think this is a very comfortable gun. I have a shortened trigger finger, and so to be able to reach the trigger comfortably, this gun really fits the bill. It's very, very comfortable to hold if you have small hands. Another plus to this, using this as a suppressor host, is what we referred to earlier, the barrel nut that comes on this gun. You can take the factory barrel nut off and buy an adapter which replaces the barrel nut and then adds the 1/2 by 28 threads. So it's very easy to adapt to a threaded configuration if the gun you have doesn't already have threads on it. This is a composite. It's got a lot of plastic. A lot of people don't like that. This certainly doesn't seem to be as heftily built as some of the other guns we'll talk about. So one downside might be the durability of this model. I have shot this gun probably about 500 rounds and haven't had any issues with any parts breaking or any failures so far. It's been a very fun gun to shoot. It has a different safety than some. The safety is right here. That's safe. That's fire, which is a little counterintuitive compared to like a 1911 style safety. It does have a block, the safety block, so when the gun is on safe and the magazine is in, you can drop the hammer, which takes a little getting used to too. But all in all, I think if you're looking for a light gun, if you have small hands, you want a small grip, it's easy to adapt. Those are all good features of this gun, and I've had good luck so far with this gun. It has a integrated rail if you want to put a laser on it. And then next up, let's talk about the Ruger Mark II. This is a stainless steel model. These are built very well. They're very durable. These will just last forever. Now these do have the barrels that are attached to the upper receiver, so if you want barrel work, you have to consider that you're shipping a handgun. When you ship this to have barrel work done, Tornado Technologies did this barrel work. They do a very good job. They shortened the barrel. We'll talk a little bit about that. If you want to shoot 22 long rifles and you don't want to have to always buy subsonic rounds, it's good if you can short the barrel to maybe 3.5 inches. You're much more likely to be satisfied with the rounds being subsonic. A wider variety of high velocity rounds will be subsonic the shorter the barrel. That's counterintuitive. You think if the short barrel you're going to have a huge blast, but the suppressors do a very good job of handling the blast. But if the bullet comes out supersonic, the suppressor can't do a thing about that sonic crack that you'll hear, and you'll be a little disappointed in how quiet the gun is if the bullets are always supersonic. So a shortened barrel helps with that, about 3 or 3.5 inches. The closer you can get to that, the more different high velocity rounds will come out subsonic in your gun. Now, this gun is heavier, the larger grip. I have put a Volquartsen trigger in this gun. It's a lot of fun to shoot. It is a bigger gun, so if you have small hands, you might find this a little bit more difficult to shoot, but it's not a lot larger as far as the grip goes than the Walther, but it is larger. That is a consideration. Also, these don't come with rails, so you will have to have some work done if you want rails on them. There again, this gun comes with just your standard pistol sights too, and we're really talking about plinking fun, target shooting fun with suppressors. So whether you want a red dot or regular iron sights, that's your call, but you do have to have work done to these handguns if you want a red dot. Now, one downside to the Ruger Mark II is the takedown. This is a more difficult gun to take apart for cleaning. The Walther takedown is fairly straightforward. It's more like a modern semi-automatic pistol, fairly easy to take apart and clean. It's not as easy as the high standard, which we went over in our other video. We'll review again. But it's a lot easier to take apart and clean than the Ruger Mark II. The other feature of this gun, which makes it get dirty a little faster, is the ejection port size. All of the exhaust has to come out of this area. And once again, when you suppress a gun, it's going to have more blowback and it's going to get dirty faster. So that's a consideration. And in that vein, the Browning Buckmark, when this gun is cycled, you can see that it's open on both sides of the chamber. So this gun will stay cleaner for a little bit longer. When you take this gun apart, you take these two screws out, this bar comes off and the gun comes apart. The barrel comes off with a screw here. It's fairly easy to disassemble. I would say it's easier to disassemble than the Ruger Mark II. It's harder to disassemble than the Walther, and it's certainly harder to disassemble than the high standard. Now, the one thing that you notice about this gun, or that I notice about this gun right away, is the grip is very large. This is, if you have large hands, this would be a gun that I think you'd find very comfortable. I've had to actually take some of the grip off so I can actually get to the trigger on this gun. It's a little bit of a reach for me. And so if you have small hands, I think the Browning Buttmark may seem a little large to you. It's not particularly heavy compared to a stainless steel Ruger. It's lighter, but it is larger. And so you need to consider that. It is a cleaner operating gun though. And then when we get back to the high standard, this gun also, when you cycle this gun, you can notice that the breech area is completely open. So of all of these guns, the Walther and the high standard have a more open breech. The Walther is closed a little bit on the left side of the gun. So this is the most open, cleanest operating. The Walther is probably the second cleanest operating. The Browning is the third cleanest operating. And the Ruger is the least cleanest operating. And so the Ruger is also the hardest to take apart. The high standard is the easiest to take apart. The Walther is the next easiest. The Browning next easiest. And the Ruger is the least easiest to take apart. So all of those are things you need to consider when you're talking about trying to pick a gun to be a suppressor host. They're all good. What I'd like to do now, I think, is let's show these guns firing, and we will try to do some slow-mo so you can see these guns in operation and see a little bit about what I'm talking about with the blowback as far as the guns operating and getting dirty faster or dirty slower. So let's take a look at that and see what we see. What we wanted to show with the slow motion footage is the gases being expelled from the gun as it's cycling, so that you can see what we were talking about as far as how dirty or how clean the guns stay when you use suppressed fire. Well, I hope we've given you some useful information about these different handguns. We wanted to try to briefly review some of the pluses and minuses each model has to offer. I hope you found the information useful. If you did, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you have any questions or comments, please post those and I'll try to respond to those in a timely fashion. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.